Welcome to another edition of the Postgame Wrap, brought to you by Red Ritter Outfitter, the fans' favorite since 1975. Well, Texas Tech fell to number 7 TCU 34-24 Saturday in Fort Worth, and it was a very disappointing game in the way that, not the result, because that's about what TCU was favored by, and I think it's about what many of us expected, was that TCU would win by about 10 points. Anywhere from basically more than one score is what a lot of us thought. So that's not as disappointing as the fact that the way the game played out and the fact that Texas Tech capitulated in the fourth quarter. The Red Raiders had a 17-13 lead early in the fourth quarter and were outscored 21-7. And that's a recurring theme. I actually was kind of looking some things up because I noticed this keeps happening. The Red Raiders have lost now 4 out of their last 5 games. They lost to Kansas State, at Oklahoma State, then they crushed West Virginia at home, then they lost to Baylor big 2 weeks ago, and then lost here just this last Saturday to TCU by 10 points. So they've lost 4 out of 5. Every one of those games, those losses were by more than one score, and they lost by an average of just over 14 points per game. So they're in those 4 losses. The average loss was by 2 touchdowns. And again, in the fourth quarter, they've been outscored in those 4 losses 66-15. So that's terrible. And you look just in the last 2 games against Baylor and TCU, in-state conference rivals, they were outscored 42-7 in the fourth quarter. Games where they were right there within a play or two, and then the fourth quarter they just got blown out. And it's easy to me to see that the reason why is because the defense is keeping this team in. The defense was terrific, led by Tyree Wilson, but it wasn't just him. The whole defense played really, really well against TCU. Really, they only allowed TCU to score 6 points on offense through 3 quarters. Of course, the Horned Frogs had that big punt return early on in the game to open the game. The defense, for the most part, just got worn down and got run over. They were put in some bad situations by, and we'll get to this here in a minute, but, offense either turn the ball over or failing to convert on fourth down many times in their own territory. So the defense, Tyree Wilson played like an All-American, just a complete beast stud. He looks every bit the first-round draft pick he's been talked about being projected at. But not just him. Josiah Pierre had a great game. Opposite Tyree, rushing the passer. Both those guys were just a terror to TCU and really effective with the Horned Frogs. And the Horned Frogs have one of the top offenses in the country. And they were without Quentin Johnston, their stud receiver, which is a big deal. But, come on, everybody's missing guys at this point. TCU struggled because Tyree Wilson, Josiah Pierre, and others really got after them up front. And, Jalen Hutchings, Tony Bradford up front, they were really good. Linebackers, Krishan Merriweather, Jacob Rodriguez when he was in there, Kosai Elders, they all played well. I thought Rashad Williams had a couple penalties against them, but still had a good game. Dejan Taylor Demerson was really good. Muddy Waters was really good at times. Malik Dunlap made some good plays. So Reggie Pearson took a couple bad angles, which he seems to be good for a game, but overall played a really good game. So that defense had them positioned to win, just like they have in other games, but they get worn down because, honestly, Tech isn't playing very good in terms of complementary football. The offense is letting them down, whether it be, you could say, point-to-play calling, offensive line play, the injuries of quarterback, whatever you want to call it. It's all of the above, and it's cost the team. And so by the time it gets to the fourth quarter, and the defense has been on the field a long time, they just run out of juice. And this is with Tim DeRuyter doing a good job of substituting players in and trying to get these guys rest. Tech is actually deeper than they have been. So it's not, in my opinion, a question of depth as much as it is the fact the offense is not doing the defense any favors. Now, TCU, it wasn't quite as bad as against Baylor in terms of time of possession, but especially in the second half, it seemed like Texas Tech was on the field a long time. And then there was that possession where there were 3 defensive penalties on the Red Raiders, and one of them was a face mask, which I know a lot of people were upset, and I don't think it was a face mask. It wasn't. But I see why the ref called it. I don't think it was a big conspiracy like some people are saying. I just think it was a bad call at a really bad time where Tech looked like they were going to get off the field. It was third down. It was a sack or an incomplete pass. Can't remember. But Tyree Wilson made a great play again. And Max Duggan, TCU's quarterback, kind of ducked his head. And Tyree Wilson's glove hit his helmet, but it wasn't. He didn't grab his face mask. It shouldn't have been called a face mask. But the way Duggan's head moved and everything and where the ref was, I could see why he called it. It was just the wrong call and a really bad break for Texas Tech. And they had a couple other calls that didn't go their way, which honestly were coin tosses. And after that, man, it's like, as I've been saying, I've been using this expression, the levee broke, and, basically TCU rolled from there. I thought that was really cool that Tech made another fourth down stop in the red zone later in the game. Red Raiders were able to score, or it could have been even worse, this whole fourth quarter. Getting owned in the fourth quarter. I don't know any other way to say it. It could have been a lot worse, but Tech stepped up on defense yet again, and then the offense was able to get a garbage touchdown when the game was already over. But another thing I mentioned, those fourth down decisions and the reliance on analytics. Of course, against Texas, I mean, it probably won you that game. You probably don't beat Texas without going 6 for 8, or whatever they were on fourth down. But, I think you can't just go by the sheet. I think when Tech went for it on fourth down, I think it was at that point TCU had scored on that drive where they got those penalties and went up by 3. And you had a 3rd and 2. And Tyler Shuck threw into double coverage deep. So then when you bring in Donovan Smith on 4th and 2 and he gets stuffed on the run, there was a receiver open. I mean, you could start blaming these guys or the coaches or whoever who've done a good job. Don't get me wrong, they've taken the blame. They haven't been blaming players. But I'm just saying, a lot of people pointed to the fact that Nehemiah Martinez was opening the flag. But you bring in Donovan Smith on perhaps the biggest play of the game. He hasn't played a lot. He's played only a handful of snaps in the game. And you expect him just to execute. And I just don't think football works that way. So that, I felt like on fourth down there and in your own territory, you punt the ball. Your defense has been playing really well. The only score you'd given up was that, aided by 3 penalties. So I just feel like that was a poor decision. There you say, you know what? I know it's telling me the card says green or whatever, but let's punt it, rely on our defense, try and get the ball back and win the game. That's not what happened. I know a lot of people have lost faith in Joey McGuire. There are some decisions he's made that I question. Some play calling decisions by Zach Kitley, I have questioned. But do I still believe in them overall despite having lost 4 out of 5? Yes. It's year 1. They still have 3 games to get to a bowl game. As I've said, as long as they get to a bowl game in this first year, okay. You keep momentum rolling from last year's 7-6 season that ended with the big bowl win. But they got a big test coming up in Kansas. Kansas just whipped Oklahoma State. They ran for over 300 yards. On Texas Tech's defense has played well, and very well against the run. So, and it's a night game at the Jones. No matter how good Kansas is, and they do, I think they're a solid football team. You can't lose that game to Kansas at home. If you want to go to a bowl, you want this season to be considered by any stretch of the imagination a success, you got to win that game. And then you got to figure out at least a split out of at Iowa State, which is tough to play there, and Oklahoma at home. So it's still out there for you, but they got to fix some things. They got to figure out their identity on offense. By that, they need to start running the ball because the offensive line didn't just play a terrible game last week against TCU. I thought they played all right, and that's even with a couple of guys injured. So you can't just say, the offensive line is terrible and that's why they lost the game. No, they played better. Not great, but better. And good enough to win. You got to figure out, if you want to go with Shuck, okay. But you got to figure out identity with this team. To me, right now, your defense is keeping you in it. Your special teams needs to get together. Not only did they allow the punt return, but they also had a couple of questionable kick returns on their own that hurt them in terms of field position. So that's been a problem again. So they need to tighten things up there in special teams. And then your offense has to find a way to feature the running backs more. Hey, how about looking up those tight ends, those giant tight ends. Now they may have helped. I need to watch it again. They may have helped with the pass blocking and the run blocking, so that may have taken them out of a lot of options as receivers. But still, I'd like to see some of those big athletes get targeted, maybe here or there. I just feel like they're better weapons than how they're being utilized right now. So a lot to figure out in terms of what this program's about, how they're going to win fourth quarters, get over these struggles in the fourth quarters, because that is the biggest thing to me. Is what's going on with this losing streak, this 4 out of 5, and they can't, and they have to figure it out in a hurry because they have Kansas coming, like I said, who is much better than we've remembered this program in quite some time. So it's going to be a challenge for Texas Tech. They can do it, but they got to, like I said, shore some things up, and I think. All the talks about it, losing faith in McGuire and Kitley, I think are a bit, especially McGuire, are a bit premature. We'll have to see how they finish this season. And it's still year one, but definitely a disappointing loss, the way they lost to TCU. I completely understand the frustration from the fan base, but we'll see how they respond. I'm getting tired of saying that. Seems like I've said that a lot here recently, but again, there was a great effort from the players. See if they can do it again against Kansas and get a W, and then you got those final 2 games to win at least one of them to get back to a bowl game. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time.